John, welcome to the show, my man. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Good to meet you.
Same. It's summertime. It's a beautiful day. We're going to have a nice conversation here. We'll sprinkle in some data along to keep it interesting.
I'm looking forward to it.
I know. And yes, we talk about it on the show. And yes, we always start with it, but it's one of the most important things for people that have been home, for people that are dealing with the highs and lows of isolation. Maybe not so much in the data space. If there's people that are a little bit more introverted, they enjoy the quiet, but there is the rest of the world that still needs to go out. And I know I've had some ups and downs dealing with the self-isolation, and I just would love to know what you've done to get out of bed. What have you done, not today, but last March, April, May, June, a year ago for today, when you didn't think you were able to get out of bed? I don't know you, so I'm throwing a line out there, but you get the storyline of like, how'd you make it through?
Darren, it's a very unfortunate time that we all had to navigate through. And this afforded, an opportunity, and I count myself among the lucky that I'm able to conduct a lot of my responsibility towards my job and my inspiration of finding therapies for people that need them suffering with cancer. And so that's been kind of, you say, what kept you coming out of bed, to be in a privileged situation, to be able to help people. People have hope. And I look at myself and I say, I can do something about it. And so, the pandemic offered time for people to reflect. And when you're at home, you have more kind of downtime to think. And it's really been able to, open channels for innovation and thinking, how can we do things differently? You have a chance to step back and say, how can I do things a little bit differently, maybe more efficiently, maybe in a nonlinear fashion? But to me, again, the mission and by virtue of what I do for a living, helping people in need of therapies to address their illnesses, that's been kind of the catalyst for me to engage with work, et cetera. You do miss a lot of things, and maybe we can talk about it later on. But again, count myself as one of the lucky ones to be able to do my job in a fairly virtual manner.
Yeah, there are the lucky ones, and I think about that, as we reflect and look back and look forward. There's been huge winners and massive losers. Like this pandemic I feel like just wiped out the middle of the win and the lose. You're either in the right sector working on the right thing that just needs it, or you just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and like your business is crushed. March is when we were remote in San Francisco. That's where I was living. I think it was like late March or February. Now the days blur. It was just kind of crying on the couch, just watching the world, right? No international travel. The market's crazy, uncertainty. Then you get into this no mask, shut down, don't shut down. I mean, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And we are the adults, you and I. So we're running teams. And if we're in that place where we have to get our house in order and we're the adults, it's just that also pressure of like, turn the camera on and smile and just calm your troops down. Yeah. Like that's kind of, so even this podcast, I'm not a podcaster. And if the lighting was working, it'd be insane. But during self-isolation, I was like, I'm going to go all in. If we're going to work from home, I want to have the best audio video setup. It turned up. So going through where you said you were lucky in the work you can do, you were probably doubly blessed that you can do it, I assume, with some great tech at home and at the office, right? Is that a fair statement? How are you able to do this work at home? How much work did it take you to get to the right flow?
I think it's twofold. It's technology that one is able to leverage. And prior to this, none of us were experienced Zoom users or Microsoft Team users. The etiquette of you're on mute, that's still something that we live with. Reading people's faces and reactions. There's so much that you could do when you read an audience in a room and craft your message accordingly and sense that people may or may not be getting the message. And so we've all had to adopt to it. And technology and having good cameras do help. But there's also the idea of how do you engage team members where it's a truly decentralized team, not only within the same region, or it could be across the globe. And so you have different time zones, different needs and at the home with wives, partners,
I
spouse,
know.
kids. And so those all draw on your time. And those are all things that we have to adapt to. So although maybe a typical data scientist may not have to be on premise during the pandemic, different than, say, a wet laboratory individual or a manufacturing individual, there's still a lot of things that you had to improve on. Maybe the specific thing for data scientists is compute capabilities. And this is where technologies such as cloud computing is really, truly the great equalizer. It allowed for people to not really tax their machines that they have at home, but really rely on the cloud for storage, for compute. And that you have to credit technology for. But again, what you're hearing is it's a combination of leveraging technology that might have been nice to have, but also stepping up our game from a behavioral perspective and change a few things on how we read people, how we interact with people,
Yeah.
because it's equally crucial.
And that there's a lot there. And one of the things that, two things I want to touch on is one, reading people. I find two things. One, and I want to ask you this question back. I'm a little bit annoyed that my first camera doesn't work, but I've watched myself so much on camera. I used to talk like this. For everyone listening and if who's going to watch, Hisham, I don't know if he's went through coaching or whatnot. The person has incredible body language. You can't read him at all. I think we're playing poker, but I would talk like this. So I think for me, one of the things I've learned through, and as you watch me, I feel like I'm a little bit more controlled of my body because I can't stand looking at it. Have you done the same? Have you seen that? Have you coached people?
Yeah, and again, this pandemic has taught us, you probably didn't think twice about what I appeared to other people in different regions when they're participating in a meeting. But we've all become more self-aware of how we appear, what our body language is telling others. Am I excited about a topic? Am I doubtful? And so you become hyper focused and hyper aware of the messages that you're sending without even saying a word. And I think it's a skill that we are all kind of gathering as this pandemic has drawn out. And so I think we'll emerge, hopefully, as better readers of body language, as better communicators, because we haven't had the luxury of being in person and interacting in person for a while. And so I hope that this only goes to reinforce the importance of not only listening, but also seeing the person that I'm having a discussion with.
I'm so happy you said that, because when I have one of our senior leaders join a call, I just love watching everyone's body language face. So even though I'm listening, I'm always just looking at the boxes. Did that punch land? Because I knew the deck or I knew the joke. And I'm always like, it's like these boxes let you just look at a lot of people's reaction at the same time. And you can, if you don't be afraid to call on somebody. So, and I think the other thing you said is compute power. It is something that I've had a lot of shows, but we've not really double clicked on that, in the sense that we've been blessed with internet access at home. We leave it there. Like, hey, we've got good pipes coming into our house. We can be on here and we can have our family on their work streams. But you're right. Even for me, when I do the post-podcasting editing, I just throw it up there on Spotify and I just go to the refrigerator. Like, I didn't invest there's no CPUs in my house. Right? Just throw it up there and I get the email. It's ready. Very well said.
Yeah, that's a very important piece. I call it the great equalizer. You don't have to have a building that you're cooling to house data in. The model has shifted, and it's been kind of a blessing for a lot of the people. And data is a currency for many industries, and having data at your fingertips from anywhere that you are forced to locate or relocate from has kept the lights on in many different professions and industries.
And I think going into one of the industries I wanted to spend time with you about is data for drug development. Let's talk in terms of drugs, especially for cancer, as well as just the overall priority of medicine. there is the COVID vaccine, and there was a way that that drug was created. There was a way that was built, designed. So when we talk about, data for drugs and for cancer, pick this up wherever you want to go, where it's designed, built. You take it from here, but it's such an important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. The record speed at which vaccines were developed during the pandemic has really opened a lot of eyes to the art of the possible. When urgency, when the will, when technology and the skill of people all converge on a problem, there's nothing that we can't do as a humanity. And I think there'd be a lot of lessons learned that you're going to see people using computers, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data in ways that we might have thought was possible, but now we have an empirical way to point to a success story that is saving humanity and say, how can we replicate it to provide not only therapies, but care, quality of life for people who are suffering from illnesses, cancer being one. But my hope is that there'd be a lot of lessons, just like when we went to the moon, and that gave rise to a lot of technologies that had nothing to do with going to the moon. Research and ways of doing things often transform in a very meaningful way how we do things moving forward. My hope is that this is a point in time where we go back and reflect and say, we've learned a lot. We've turned something horrible to humanities into opportunities for us to learn and do things a little bit more efficiently.
What I think about, in addition to what you said, and this is going to be, it sounds like a negative, but it's just a thought bubble, but it does sound negative, is just imagine if the government would have said, hey, let's, in addition to COVID, let's kind of fast track and do some stuff with diabetes and do some stuff with cancer. Like, we've already have the support of Congress and the Senate to fund and structure a vaccine and do things. Diabetes is next, right? Or some cancers, not all, right? But I always think about, boy, the government always crams other stuff into a bill or something. Why couldn't they cram a couple other treatments? And maybe they did or didn't, but that's kind of the stuff that I just look back on. So, we had that, like you said, this one opportunity where we had this clear lane to go from thought, design, test, clinical trial to public. I don't know if that time ever comes again. The next one is, I know that's what I think about. I don't want to sound as a negative, but I just wonder if we would have put a couple more vaccines on that list. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
What you bring up is, can the same approaches that gave us vaccines be used to and be cast to the general good on other disease types? And my earlier point is, you're going to see, and there's already a lot of players in this space that is using some of the same technologies, messenger RNA delivery of therapeutics, to approach a lot of different illnesses beyond the vaccine story that we're seeing. And so, rest assured, and I'm full of hope that the same instruments and the same approaches will be used to transform how we address and identify and commercialize therapies to address other illnesses.
Can you do that in 18 months? I'm agreeing with you, right? Can you do it in 18 months, or is it still 5 years? That's just, that's my grr.
I think that's the excitement of living in this time. To see what's the art of the possible. There's something to be said about hyper-focused on a problem that is a matter of life and death, where you have the numbers, the tallies every day coming in globally. We've never witnessed anything like this before. And so having kind of a hyper-focused, being very deliberate, disciplined on what you need to address today and what could be addressed in the very near future. It's just how we go about our lives every day. We prioritize, and I'm not weighing in on should we have bundled multiple illnesses under the same kind of effort. But to me, I'm really hopeful that some of the same approaches would be used to address a lot more illnesses.
And what is insane about this is there's also a shot you can do this and do it from your house and have breakfast with your family, walk your dog, play with your cat, feed your fish. I don't know, but isn't it? It's actually another miracle. What got done, and the workforce is still. I'm not going to say rested, but in a weird way rested, right? You worked hard, but you're still working maybe from an environment that you don't know if it's Monday or Sunday.
Yeah, I
But
would argue that the pandemic kind of yes, people were working from home, but when I speak with my colleagues, not only within my company, but across other companies, is that the efficiency by which work was done was extremely high. You woke up very early, you're on calls during the day. There's no time wasted in going to the office, coming back from the office, some commutes, maybe an hour or two every which way. And so all that was channeled into actual work and productivity. And I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier in terms of you either were on the bus or you're left
right,
behind. A lot of industries came up to fruition where they may have been underappreciated. I can point to telemedicine as something that was nice to have. We've been tracking that for
huge
many
winner, huge
years.
winner.
It's a huge winner, and this speaks to the innovative and the entrepreneurial nature of people around the world. They've been able to turn something into a vehicle for change. And now what we end up with is the consumers actually are conditioned to some of these services. And so, what do you mean you can't see me online? Even if the pandemic is over, I like what I experienced. Some people may not have liked it, and that's the heterogeneity of what we have in people and the consumer. That's what makes us. But I would say there's a lot of innovation, and the entrepreneurial spirit is very alive and well. You know, that is one
Yeah.
example, but you can point to a lot of delivery examples where people
Yeah.
didn't need to go to the grocery stores and have things delivered. And so it's really amplified some of the things that were nice to have to be more crucial.
You see me chumping to get something in here because I got to tell you, you hit another trigger. You hit a pain point, a nerve. There are so many employees that have to accrue a vacation day, right? You get X amount when you start, then you accrue. In the Silicon Valley startups, they do Google unlimited vacation days. So it's a kind of a different world, unlimited days versus accrue. Being at a place that used to have accrue days, telemedicine to me was the biggest delight because now you do not have to burn a half day of work, which took you a month to earn, to go see a doctor. And I can't speak for most, but for me, when I've done that, the doctor's like, you'll be okay. It's Tylenol. But you always go to the doctor. You think it's like, so you had to book an appointment 2 weeks out. You had to make sure it was maybe between your lunch break or early in the morning. You got to leave early. And like you're saying, there were so many blockers that made that not possible. But I'm so delighted that it's here. It is delightful.
And that
Oh,
speaks
it is for the employees. It's such a delight.
that speaks to the power of how we live. We it used to be a cliche. We live in a digital world, but the pandemic offered an opportunity for digital platforms and technologies to actually do good and to become not just a nice to have, but really an enabler for, at times, life and death, someone risking their life by going out there. If they're a susceptible population, you don't have to leave your home. Things will come to you.
Yeah.
You're able to engage with the outside world using these technologies and platforms. And so it's really a testament to what we've been saying all along.
Yeah.
Nice to have, it's coming. And then, markets are efficient. When you have a need for something, it will rise to prominence and there's demand for it. And I think we've witnessed a lot of these things just institutionalize themselves as services and benefits that people use every day.
I can't wait to see what's next. I just don't want another pandemic to bring it there, but I'm waiting for the sequel. I can't, and I think the sequel starts January 1st. I just feel like it's June, July, everyone is still trying to figure out how do you get back to work and whatnot. I don't know. I just feel like January, now you're home for 2 years, you'll have a good sense for it. But I don't know. This is the cliffhanger. I think June's the cliffhanger. You got certain companies mandatory coming back to work. Others are still figuring out. What do you think June is? I think it's cliffhanger. What do you think June is?
It really depends on if we have an international audience or this is a
Good point.
US audience. We continue to be privileged to have vaccines available to us. Things seem to be on their way back to normal. You'll see activity in the street, in the restaurants, et cetera. So you already see a lot of these things picking up. But that's unfortunately not the case everywhere.
I know.
And you want everyone to be in the same bin. But from a US perspective, I'm very hopeful that in the very near term, we'll have scientific conferences again, just by virtue of and have that interaction, brainstorm on ideas. This is what I'm thinking of. You can do that to an extent, but I'm really looking forward to that face to face. Someone asked me, what do you miss most? I said, people. Seeing someone on a screen is not like sitting down and having conversation and interacting with them. You can accomplish so much face to face. But again, it also allowed people to say what is possible in a decentralized fashion. I think we've actually pushed the limits on what we can do in a virtual manner.
Nice.
But there's been a lot of kind of compensation going on. I think face to face would be great. So I'm really hopeful with you. June, July, August, whenever that inflection point is, we know that there's an inflection point on the way back to normalcy.
Yeah. Listen, Hisham, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's nice to meet, again, dealing with loneliness and isolation. It's nice to meet a new friend. We have a nice little crew of pharma, biotech, healthcare, hospital, data enthusiasts. So I'm going to connect you with on a thread, and they're all just good people. It's all brands and companies that you've been working with. So if that's okay, I'd like to connect you with a few people.
I appreciate it. Thanks you for the opportunity. It's good to meet you. And
this is a great show. Thank you for being on the Data Standard podcast. We're sponsored by Pandio, and I'll connect you with the Pandio ML, which is a new open source tool. So I'll get you an early preview of their open source work as well.
Great. And good luck. Continued success with your show.